Yes, meeting is streaming live. Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Story Hour, where we share real life stories of how human design has helped people to tell a better, richer story of who they are. And today, my guest is Guin White, who I am really excited to introduce you to. Guin is, I'm in the wrong view. I wanted this to be, I'm not sure how it's streaming. There we go. I met Guin through the human design circles. I think we first met in one of Karen Curry Parker's communities, and then we saw each other on a call together in Katie Irvine's, one of her classes she was offering. And that just seems to be how human design stuff works. Once you go deep dive, you wind up seeing people and something about them calls out to you, right? So we've connected a few times. And anyway, so this is Guin, and I'm going to let her tell you all about herself, and I'm going to pin this to the group so that you guys can find this later. So while we're doing that. So welcome, Guin. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what you're doing these days and how human design has helped you?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much, Kathy, for inviting me to join you today. I am so excited and honored to be here chatting with you. Who am I? So these days I am working with introverts primarily. I've gone through my share of niches, but right now I'm really championing introverted leaders in sort of high stakes industries. That's sort of the world that I came from as an introvert myself. And I'm using, of course, my human design as well as some coaching training to really dive deeply into the challenges and helping bring out the true, authentic leader in the introverts that I'm working with. As well, I'm also working in many collaborations, and many, I mean several. So kind of across the spectrum, many of them related to human design, some related to coaching, and then the newest collaboration having to do with artificial intelligence. So bringing AI into the conversation of coaching and coaching through the lens of human design for me personally.
Yeah, you're kind of wearing a lot of hats.
I am, but yeah, those are all passions of mine, and they're all strong commitments. My sacral really loves, each and every one of those things. And I can't wait, to essentially figure out how to integrate them all. And that's really been my process over the past several years is taking all of the passions, all of the things that I truly do love and respond to, and integrating them. I come from a kind of an entrepreneurial sales background as far as career is concerned. And so it's just sort of a natural for me to be kind of carving this very unique and weird path.
Let's back up a little on your path and start with where you were, what you were doing when you found human design, how you found it, and then kind of, the story of how it has shaped this path now.
Absolutely. So my entire life, I have always been, true to my generator nature, really focused on who am I?
I'm sorry. That reminds me, I did not tell everyone. And so can you tell everyone your type and authority? You're a 4/6.
4/6, generator with emotional authority.
Emotional authority, right? Yep. Yes. Okay. There we go. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but everyone's like always tells me you need to tell us this at the beginning, so I forgot.
Quite all right, Kathy. So yeah, going back to the idea of kind of self-illumination being a real common thread throughout my life. I've always been the one taking the personality assessments, from very early. I think I took my first MBTI assessment before I was 12. So, and knew, immediately that, I was an introvert. So
For those who don't know the lingo, that's the Myers-Briggs.
Myers-Briggs, exactly. Yeah, the Carl Jungian based, probably the best known kind of personality typing a system that a lot of people have their 4 letters. Mine are INTJ, and I, progressed from there. Gallup's Strength Finders. When I was deep in my career, there were several of those types that were more kind of career focused. And then more recently, Enneagram. I kind of came about Enneagram sort of before I came to human design, and seriously could never figure out what numbers I was. I took multiple assessments, and they were all over the place. So Enneagram was kind of hard for me to connect with in that way. And I know so many great coaches and guides out there that use Enneagram and love it and swear by it. And I think there's true value in it. But for me, it wasn't the tool. What was the tool was definitely human design. And let's see, in 2019, I was truly struggling. I had kind of come to the end of a multi-year, very successful career, but I had really efforted my way through and neglected my emotional self, my spiritual self, sort of paid some attention to them mentally speaking, like, I felt I was or thought I was leading some kind of spiritual existence, but it really wasn't. It was all head led living. And I would go through cycles of, bursts of energy with longer and longer periods of burnout and just exhaustion. And I finally reached kind of the end of that ability to continue with that cycling. And probably mid to late 2019, I recognized that it was time for me to stop what I was doing. I was literally on a phone call with my sales director. We were doing kind of a 90-day touch-in call. And I found the words coming out of my mouth, I can't do this job. I don't believe in what I'm doing anymore. And he was like, what? Because my performance was still very good, but, sitting in my desk, looking at, my work from my perspective, I felt like I was stuck in concrete. And that was pretty much, sabbatical / retirement, whatever you want to call it. I left my job at that point and knew that I was not going to be seeking another job, which for a line 4 individual is panic city. In particular, one who is conditioned to do. I mean, I have completely open head, completely open root. So my life has been an exercise in pressure cooking. I am constantly rushing, and that's how I lived, always under the gun, always doing the thing immediately just to get it done so that I wouldn't live under the pressure of having the thing there.
Possible. The pressure is still there. No
exactly. Of course. No, it was always just the next thing that was giving me pressure, and then the next thing, right. Which I constantly signed myself up for. It's an addictive pattern. So it was around the late 2019, I was really struggling, and I found this really amazing group of mostly women. And it was an online group. We hadn't really gotten into, the throes of COVID at that point. But I was working from home at that point, living from home, and really isolated in my world at that point. And through the course of navigating this community, I discovered human design. Everyone was introducing themselves, as part of their bios with things like, I'm a 5/1 emotional projector. I was like, what are they talking about? I'm a 2/4 manifester. And I was completely clueless as to what those terms meant. So a quick Google search turned up human design, and it was like, the lightning bolts. Immediately I knew that this was a system that I had to learn about, needed to know. There was just something that was screaming at me, you need to learn this. And within days, I was in my first, it was like a weekend long workshop for introduction to human design. And the couple, I think they lived in Bali. It was a really cool couple, and they were offering it through Facebook, and we connected through WhatsApp, and I had such a great experience with that and recognized that I wanted to continue learning. Soon after that, signed up for a Living Your Design course through Human Design America. And then just kind of went from there. I was literally consuming every bit of human design content I could get my hands on, my eyes on, my keyboard on. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then I wound up meeting you in Karen's community. And then I saw you in Katie's stuff.
Yeah.
So we've been kind of really
Absolutely
down a bunch of different rabbit holes on this whole thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And found Gene Keys very shortly after I started my my human design journey as well. And that's also been, a layer of my human design study. I love Richard. I actually worked for the Gene Keys organization for a period, helping them with their events. It was a blast.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. That's
I work with a lot of human design people. So I've, worked with them. I work currently with Shaitan and Kerala of Evolutionary Human Design.
Oh, yes.
With Beth Davis.
Oh, okay.
Of Your Purpose. Yeah. I'm helping out a lot of people.
Wow. That's really cool. So
it is really cool.
That is, I have so many things I want to ask you. So I'm wondering if I'm not sure where to go first, if there's something more you just want to flow with. Otherwise, I can just fire off some random questions.
Go for it. Ask away.
So when you found this, when you started, you looked at your chart the first time and you read, oh, I'm a 4/6 emotional generator with blah, 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 whatever. What was your biggest, oh yeah, that explains it? Like, what was the thing that you remember your first reframe of something that you now understood?
Yeah, that is a really great question. The types, and when I first started, I was going very strictly traditional human design. Like that was most of what I could find. And so 4 types, the manifesting generator was essentially considered just a subtype in that particular school. And but it was really interesting just looking at how traditional human design broke down the types, and how there was like this really cool chart. I remember that had the main question, the signatures, the self and not self, all of those things. And I think for me, it really came down to this idea that I was not supposed to be initiating, that there are only really, 8 to 10% of the population that are designed to operate that way. And that, I think, was like, oh, wow, like, holy cow. So, I mean, I lived my life initiating, for the most part, and did very little responding. And and of course, as an emotional person as well, emotional authority, my decision making was completely misaligned. So that, I think, might not have been such an aha as more of a holy cow, like, how am I ever going to figure out how? And of course, there again, it was like my first probably 2 years of my experiment with human design were still all up in my head. It was all trying to figure out how to, da 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 da. And it was like, as
Putting
soon as
yourself
I
in-
recognized my, you know, open head and undefined ajna, still were trying to answer all the questions, still trying to figure it out. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm still, it's like, this is such a conditioned pattern that I have. So now I recognize the words, when I hear the words figure out coming out of my mouth, it's like red flag. And like,
Yes.
okay, that's a sign that I'm, relying on this conditioned pattern. I don't resist it, which is what the tendency had been as well when I recognized a shadow or,
Mhm.
some old pattern rearing its head, would be to like try and, repress it.
Fix it.
Exactly. Like, I've got to stop doing that. And another, part of my journey, particularly with regards to coaching, has been, like your shadows. And of course, Richard Rudd talks about this constantly, that, the way we really do reach the ultimate highest vibration expression is through the shadow. It's not, denying the shadow, it's embracing it and really like unpacking it and loving it. And, so that has been a major, point of shift for me, because, my life also, in many ways, I lived with a mask on and like hiding every flaw I could possibly hide was, tops on my agenda. I'm a total hyperachiever, classic kind of type A. And, if it didn't look perfect, if it didn't, look right, boy, I was stuffing it in the closet. Like, you can't see that. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to acknowledge it.
Yeah. And so,
Which makes it worse.
right, exactly. So there's so many ways so as an introvert, type A, with, what is it you said? You have the gate 14 is considered the most powerful gate in the chart, right? By most standards, the gate of power skills.
Power skills, right?
Five times.
Exactly. 5 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and in my incarnation cross as well.
right. It's my conscious sun, so I have it, but I have it on an
unconscious earth, but yes, exactly.
I have it on an open
Get each
sacral, so
other.
it's like grabbing everything and amplifying it. But I can't even imagine having that 5 times, and then you have the 2. You do have the gate that
Yes,
it
exactly. I've
connects.
got the whole,
And
channel.
you have that twice,
alchemy.
don't you? Or I'm not looking right now, but I thought I remembered seeing you have the
No,
2.
it's because I've got 14 so many times.
Oh, okay. I don't know
Yeah.
why. No, you have the 2. You have the 2 as your unconscious
Yeah.
Mercury and your unconscious
Yeah.
Saturn.
Yeah.
Okay. So you still have 3 leftover 14s without the 2.
Exactly.
It made me start to contemplate this. Like, how does that work when you have a gate multiple times that is part of a channel, but you only have the other end one time? Is it still, and this is a question I'm just throwing out to you or the universe, you might know an answer, but like, are you still needing, because the gate 2 is all about receiving, right?
Oh my God, exactly.
So if
Which
you have
I've
all these
never been a receiver.
Right. You have still more power skills than you have the receiving end. So being
Exactly.
able to trust that you're supported and receiving.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's interesting for me.
But you also have to look at this, Kathy. It's
Mm.
by design that I'm that way.
Right.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
it's my job to, use the power skills, to rely on those, but also to recognize, particularly with gate 2, because yeah, it's unconscious expression is clearly going to be more challenging to access. And so, if we listen to the teachings of most all of our teachers, our great teachers, our thought leaders in human design, is, leaning into the unconscious energies will unlock so much,
Yeah.
so many gifts, because again, we're so familiar with the conscious side. The black stuff is the easy stuff. Now, again, when you're getting into human design, by all means, lean into the black energies, the conscious energies, your personality, recognizing the highest vibration expressions of those, where possible, and like shooting for that. But yeah, unpacking the unconscious side is like, and I think so many times in the work that I've done myself and in the work that I do with my clients, it is so apparent to me that they know those energies are there. And those are the ones they're scaredest of. Those are the ones they run from, and I'm the same way. Those are the ones I resist the most. I worked with a client who came to me for conflict coaching. Guess what was sitting in her Saturn, her unconscious Saturn? It was gate 6. It was like, hello, of course you are looking for this. And guess what you're designed to be? You're designed to be a conflict resolution, like superhero.
Right. For those,
But it's the lesson you have to learn.
there's a lot of people who will be listening to this who are very new. And so as we mentioned gates, I think it's important to, gate 6 is often known as the gate of conflict
Or conflict
chaos,
or friction.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Or gate of friction. And so, but it is part of the channel of intimacy.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
You have to have it for relationships to work, period.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's a human characteristic. We have all the chart. Everyone needs to really remember that even if it's not defined in your chart, it's still there for you.
It just means you're here to learn to experience the full
absolutely
spectrum of all of the nuances of that particular gate or channel or whatever is open.
Yes, that's going to be some very different expression for you from, maybe moment to moment, day to day, over the course of your life.
So I do want to say we have a few people watching, and Leslie said powerful message about celebrating what's in the shadows, because that is divinely perfect too.
Absolutely.
It is divinely perfect too. Yeah. Exactly. And I think that's really an important part, because we tend to get stuck sometimes thinking, oh, I'm this way because of this.
Yeah.
Which we might be that way because of this, like I might be feeling bitter because I'm a projector. Sure. Yeah. But it's the gift in that bitterness, right? It's
exactly.
It's protecting.
And,
whatever.
Staying out of the story, leave out because like that is your mind. Anytime you have a because, especially if it's followed by a feeling, that is a story and may or may not be true. 9 times out of 10, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just acknowledge the feeling, recognize and acknowledge that it's there, and it's there for a reason.
I love the expression Robin Wynn gave us last week. It's in a lot of her books too, where she calls it the witnessing observer.
Yes.
Which is similar to Ra talks about passenger consciousness, but this idea that you don't beat yourself up for the shadow when you see it, you notice it and you just observe it and hold it with love, right? We're here to love ourselves.
Exactly. All parts, right. all parts and all expressions of all parts. So if we are true followers of human design, we recognize that there is at least a shadow and a high vibration expression. Of course, in my book, I tend to be more spectrum oriented. It's like it can express any number of ways. But yeah.
So tell me how you wound up. So you started learning about human design, going deep, learning all this stuff, and are you already at this point coaching, or did that come after you started learning human
That
design?
came after. I was learning human design. I was like diving as deeply as I could. I was just immersing myself in human design as much as I could every moment of every day. And I was getting to the place where I was like, what do I want to do with it? I'm such a practical applications. I don't have a lot of fifth line energy in my chart, but it's funny. I'm always about how to apply things. I always want to know, like, how can this be applied? How can this be used? And so that was a real big question mark. I wasn't totally sure I wanted to just read charts. I loved doing readings and I did a lot of readings, but I always recognized, like, okay, now what? Where do we go from here? I always wanted the journey to continue because I knew there was so much yet to unpack.
Mhm.
And so an email from I don't know where and I don't know how popped into my box inviting me to this like 3-day event. It was something I never in a million years would have even looked at, considered going to, but for whatever reason, I opened the email and I recognized one name of one speaker. They were doing this 3-day event with all of these different presenters. One of them, and I was like, oh, yeah, back when I was a blogger, I remember this person as being, somebody who was like really brilliant, particularly with marketing. I'm going to, dip in on this event. It was a live 3-day. Well, lo and behold, it was all about coaching. It was essentially coach after coach after coach. They all had different specialties. And by the end of the 3 days, my emotional authority and my sacral alignment were like, they were just so locked in. It was, it's like, this is what you're supposed to be doing with your human design. So yeah, that was like, okay, sign me up, please.
How did you wind up finding your, I don't know if niche is the right word, but it's really feels like you've really found your sweet spot with
Finally. Yeah, no, it's been a long time coming though, Kathy. And I think a lot of coaches do struggle with this. And it's really interesting you talk about this.
Before you go into it, I just have to say, it's perfect timing because the whole time you talked about before when you quit your job was right around your Chiron return. So you were coming off the roof as a sixth line, and this is when we shine, right? When we come off the roof, there's a little bit of figuring out how much of that stuff on the roof we want to keep with us and what's really us. And then we step into our sweet spot as the role models we're here to be. And so you're right on time.
Exactly. But at the same time, of course, as someone who, has lived the life I've lived, I want to know now. I need the clarity. And it's like, you're never going to have, I still, have to remind myself, hey, honey, it's okay. You're here to live in uncertainty, and that's fine. It's okay. You're, this is a marathon. You're not trying to win a race. So yeah, I did kind of come about my niche over time. I immediately thought, oh, I want to be an alignment coach. And of course, it was like, what is that? That was the biggest question, was what does that even mean? So then I recognized, okay, I really need to drill down on this and get more specific niche down. And it's, really funny that you talk about niching as, something that sometimes challenges many coaches deeply. And I think broadly, I have noticed that being the case. What's really interesting, I have been following another human design person, Phoebe Kuhn, who she's Australian. She has a really interesting profile. She's a 3/6. She's just a really interesting, kind of guide in how she sees human design. And she is also very entrepreneurial. And
Yeah, I
so,
think she has a free book that she promotes very
yeah,
heavily.
exactly. So,
Business
yeah,
by
when
Design
she
or something.
first released the book, I got her book. I was like obsessed. I have always had this sort of business bent. I love business. And so her language, she really was speaking my language in so many ways. And she talked about niching in a very special way. She, came up with sort of this idea. And I was like, oh, I really like this. So what I've done since then is I've sort of developed it into a process. I've sort of built upon her idea and made it into essentially quantum niche design. So I've been able to now work with several people using quantum niche design and am getting huge, like tremendous feedback. So that's been one of the gifts I think that human design has given me related to niche.
And now this podcast, tell me again what
Yeah.
it's called. I listened to the one you just released. I think it was yesterday or the day before. It was very short about quiet leadership or quiet.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah,
Oh, beautiful.
I have 2 podcasts. One I co-host with Chantal Cox called Create a Life You Love. And then I just recently started my own micro podcast, which has been a dream of mine for a long time, called Quietly Influential: Leadership Lessons for Introverts. So yeah, I have recorded 5 episodes. When they're all under 10 minutes long, it's easy to, churn those out. And I am having such a blast doing this podcast. And it's already, getting a little bit of attention from the people that I'm really looking to connect with. So yeah, I'm getting great feedback from introverts who are resonating with its message.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do talk a lot about human design as well as, a lot of other tools, but certainly.
When we're done, if you would put links to those podcasts or
Absolutely.
names in the comments here, that would
Definitely.
be really helpful. I'm sure there'd be a lot of people who are interested. So we're already getting some comments here, and I don't want to get too far behind or we'll forget what they're saying. Dana Overcash says, anytime there's a because, I'll pay attention to that. So she liked that tip. And then she also says, I agree, great lens to realign to our joy. And then Lynn says, exactly. So have the explanation of chart, then what, right? How to apply it to life. I think she's talking about you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, now what?
Yeah. So you started working with people. So most of your clients now are introverts, is what you're finding, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I tend to, speak about introversion. I actually connected like very early on when I recognized that this was, the community that I wanted to serve. And like, duh, I'm, such an introvert. I'm so nerdy. And, I connected the dots within human design. I started seeing how, in my own chart and others I know who are introverts, or at least who identify as introverts, started looking at charts and then started looking at just generally human design aspects that could, point to, introversion. Obviously, there again, introvert extrovert is a spectrum, and some people, like they identify as, I'm an extrovert when I go out into the world, but, at home, I really lean into being an introvert. And so I feel like that is also something with a lot of the introverts that I connect with is a very common theme, is essentially masking up or recognizing that you almost have to kind of feel like you have to change the way you operate to be safe, secure, okay, whatever out in the world. It's like you have to put on your extroverted hat in some form or fashion.
I'm laughing at Lisa Payne says, I'm an outgoing introvert.
Exactly.
I don't know if you've ever heard Lisa Payne's podcast. Lisa, I forget the name of your podcast, but it always cracks me up when I hear your introduction to it. She's definitely not shy. So,
but yeah, exactly. I think there's also a misconception about all introverts being shy. That is absolutely untrue. So yeah, that's another thing that, I like to address and will be addressing on the podcast.
Let's talk about, you said something about the things that can point to introversion on the chart. And I do think that it's really important whenever we talk about anything that there are no absolutes with how the chart ever expresses, right? So the chart, right? So I just want to make sure the chart never says you're going to be this person, or like when people say, what kind of career should I have? Yeah, well, it can give you some general like qualities that you might be best, but there's no absolutes in the chart because we have
like anyone could be a teacher, anyone, again. Yeah. Even though, if somebody has a 5-1, you think, oh, well, they certainly have a propensity for, teaching people things.
Right. Right.
But yes, agreed.
So what would be the things that you look at usually as things in the chart where some of that introversion shows up?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can start with the sort of broadest puzzle piece, and that's type. So if we think about the types, I think of a manifester as a classic, frankly, introvert. They have moments, of course, where they can slip into ambiversion or extroversion, just like anyone can. But when you look at how they are really designed to be, i.e., with the energy of their aura being the way it's designed to be, it's meant to really kind of carve a path and really be, brave, courageous, push right through to, the exclusion of what others think, feel, etc. And that's very important for their mission here. We need those people. So, this idea that everybody needs to get along may be BS. But yeah, so when we think about manifestors, if I look at someone's chart, they've come to me, they identify as an introvert and they're a manifestor, I think, okay, yeah, let's certainly talk about, their strategy and how they're living that out. But I would think, yeah, that makes sense, at least on the surface. You could also sort of say the same for projectors, but really, I would say less so. Reflectors certainly need, more alone time, if they're going to operate in a more aligned fashion. So by design, they're almost designed to live more like an introvert. Whether they actually are or not, is, again, it's, individual by individual. But then we can look at, profiles, particularly profile lines, the first line, hello, it's going to require, someone to really dive deeply into information and research and embodiment and really kind of have their own mind, their own path, their own time to experience whatever it is they're here to experience. So we look at the first line specifically, and then you also look at the second line. Again, it's called the hermit, for goodness sakes, in traditional human design. Now, again, I know a lot of people push back against that, because again, we have lots of 2-4s out there, Oprah Winfrey being one of them. And again, they tend to be, this sort of mix of needing to connect, but also needing a lot of time to introspect as well. So there's a real balance in human design. You could look at any 5-1 as a potential introvert.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got projection field and investigator, like, holy cow, this is someone who might live a really isolated sort of existence. Even if they're immersed in people, they're still going to feel, the projection. energy and feel like they either have to separate from it, or then there are those who buy into it, and that can lead to a lot of problems, frankly. So yeah, all of the 5 ones I know who live a very aligned life, generally speaking, are very private, or have a very private side that they know they need to protect. And also, to kind of keep that reality check.
Yeah, my husband's a 5-1 manifesting generator, so
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
But he's very like, no posting pictures of me without asking me.
Yeah, absolutely. My husband's a 5-1 and he's very much the same way. Yeah.
And but he's not even on social media, so I don't know why he cares. You know, but it's funny because there all of these things are, like you say, they're a binary, right? So they have two different ways they can express. So I am a 6-2 projector, and when you were talking about the Myers-Briggs, I never paid any attention because every time I did it, it came out different. But the only letter that was always the same is I was always an extrovert every single time.
Interesting. Yeah, that's funny.
All the other ones would go different ways. Yeah. But now I wonder if I even took it now, how I would come out, because
exactly.
But I do, when I am in group settings, tend to be the person who naturally starts guiding and taking charge and doing all that stuff in a projector way. It's in a very extroverted way, but I love my alone time, and I'm like
classic line too.
Sometimes mean about the fact that I don't want my husband, like I will listen and be like, okay, he left for the gym. Now I can leave the room and go downstairs because I don't want to talk to anybody. Right. I'm still in my alone time. Right. So yeah. So there's,
that's a 4-6, I think a lot of people also have a misconception about the line 4, that they're always networky, talky, in the mix. It's like, not really, there's, first and foremost, they like to more curate the group oftentimes, and particularly with a 4-6, they're generally speaking oftentimes going to be kind of on the outskirts of the group, more observing. They may even bring the group together, but they're still sort of on the fringe, outside looking in. That 6th line is still very much going, that sort of overseeing vibe.
I have really noticed that with the 4-6s that I know. And when I was first learning about types, and I just automatically, like from what I read and just how I put it together, thought these are going to be the people who like guide all the groups and like, just the social butterflies. Right.
Right.
And, that has not been my experience with the 4-6s that I know.
Exactly. It really, when you think about social butterfly, I think it's much more nuanced. We probably, at that point need to look at the individual, their conditioning patterns, and also their gates and planetary placements, because again, that may, lead to more of that expression. Yeah, I totally agree.
So I'd like to touch a little bit on, you were talking about your passion for AI, because AI right now in the human design community is kind of a mixed bag. And there's a lot of people out there embracing it and doing really cool things with it. Yeah. Some stuff I really find it helpful with, but there's also some people using it as a shortcut that is kind of undermining the quality of information that's out there. And I'm just wondering what you're doing with it, and
every time, sorry, it's a really interesting point, and every discussion I have around artificial intelligence, and particularly right now, it's still new, and it's, it burst onto the scene and it's grown so massively, so quickly. There's naturally going to be, ethical considerations and discussions. Right now we don't have, any kind of really, systematic approach to using AI. Everyone's doing their own thing with it. Now, in the community that, I helped co-found and now, am sort of the 4-6 curator, community sort of manager, if you will. yeah, we definitely, every time we have an event in that group, we always address the usage, making sure that if you are using AI to produce long form written content, particularly, that, you share that, you're transparent, created, with the help of, or in collaboration with artificial intelligence, however you want to say it. But another thing that we always stress is, if you are creating content with AI, making sure that it's accurate, because what we do know about the chatbots in particular is that they do what's called hallucinating. They'll make up something and they aren't going to tell you.
They've got gate 4, I think, defined.
Right? They're here. You're right. They're here to answer questions. And frankly, having a chatbot, when you have an undefined head and ajna, like I do, it is such a blessing. And, again, most of us do. It's just, again, by design, that we are not here to be churning out content. That's not, that is not the design of most of humanity. So now here we are faced with all of this social media, trying to cut through the ocean wave of, content that's out there with our own message. And that's how AI can help. It can help you really refine your message. It can be such a great collaborator, a great brainstorming partner, an assistant, whether it be a marketing assistant or a social media assistant or, a product launch assistant. It can help you through a lot of those conversations because it is very smart in those ways. It has collected all of that information and can access it lightning quick where we just can't.
Mhm.
Humans, our brains have these amazing strengths and abilities where, the AI chatbot, the AI engine, it's been trained to do certain things really, really well. We're seeing it excel at taking exams, crazy, and being able to help medical professionals and legal professionals, et cetera. It can do research like nothing we've seen before. And that's how it can be beneficial for each and every one of us. But yeah, leaving your entire content game plan up to AI, is a very slippery slope. And, but everyone is going to use it as they feel fit for them. So I try to leave judgment aside every time I have any conversation, even with AI. It's not my place to tell you how to use AI or anyone else.
Yeah.
I just know what my values are, and hopefully I adhere, to my values as I am moving forward on this journey. But I do know that when I need to, tackle a project or I'm sitting down to do some research, I always, tap into the benefits of AI. And there are so many brilliant AI tools out there as well. If you're writing or even need to just spur your own creativity and you're alone,
Mhm.
again, most of us, we're not here to just generate ideas and inspirations out of our head and act on them. That would be a misaligned path. So it can also provide something to respond to.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Because, if you're asking it questions and then it gives you something back, you can respond to whether that feels right to you in a way that
Exactly.
is not responding to your own mind.
Yeah.
That's
And yeah, as you're conversing, if you're using a chatbot like ChatGPT or Jasper or Claude, those, again, the conversations are two-way. It's not just one way. It's,
Mhm.
you can tell it to refine its message. You can also tell it when it's wrong. And that's actually important for the training of these chatbots. That's why we have free access for the most part. And guess what? All of that content is unoriginal. So that's another thing to be super careful of. If you're copying and pasting something straight from ChatGPT, and someone runs that through an AI detector, which those are widely available now, it's, everyone will know. So it's good to take those things and then add your voice.
Yeah.
Rephrase, etc.
Yeah, it's good. I think it's helpful sometimes to give you an outline that you then build on, or to give you, some, like when you're feeling like I want to create something about this, but what's, some bullet.
The biggest chore of my life is I do a lot of presentations, and I do not have the gift of, this natural ability to create slide decks. My slide decks are a mess, and I always create way too many slides, and it's like, so that has been one thing that has been a real blessing. So I can go, hey, I've got this presentation, here's what it's all about. Can you help me just outline a slide deck? And it's like, ding, ding, ding. It's like, oh, thank you. I never would have done this in 10 slides, so it's like, yes, okay, now I see how I can do this entire presentation with only 10 slides instead of 60, which is what I would have done. And it would have taken me 2 days to do just the slide deck. Yeah.
See, I would make 60 slide decks and then not talk about anything that's on the slides, because I've got the 1.8, which is from your identity center. So I just kind of in the moment just speak. And then it's like, okay, well, maybe I'll make a handout out of that. So I've stopped doing those kind of elaborate things.
Yeah.
Because I just need something pretty for people who need something to focus at, and maybe something they can write on. Okay. So I'm looking at your chart. That's why I keep looking off to the side, because I have it on a different screen over here.
Yeah.
And so you are right angle cross of contagion.
Yes.
Right. Which I love that. And I'm trying, there's several people I know who have that cross, and it's just feels so, I don't know, it's like if you were just reading names, that would just be one where I would be like, ooh, that sounds like a fun cross to have, right? Where it's like you're here to just spread something that you're so excited about that it becomes contagious, right?
Right. Torchbearer.
Right?
Yeah.
So when you first, okay, because the way the crosses were explained to me was, we're not supposed to try to become our cross.
Right.
We're supposed to use it as a, like goal. We're supposed to just see how we resonate. And that's usually a sign of how aligned we are with following our strategy and authority. And as we do that more and more, we will resonate more with it.
Exactly. We just become.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, when you first read that, it's a fun one to read, but did you say, oh, that sounds cool, but no? Or did you resonate with it?
Yeah, no, I definitely was like, what? And of course, it also depended on whose version of, the written description of the cross.
Yes, that's a good point. With the written of anything, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Again, that's, I think, one of the most wonderful things about human design. One, we talked about MBTI, it can change. Human design doesn't change. Your design is your design.
Yeah.
The Myers-Briggs,
like
you were saying, like all of these personality assessments, guess what? Your results can change. Yeah. And then the second thing is, what we were just hitting on. Is the beauty of the system. Yeah.
So it's funny for me, as I would read about the different gates, the one that resonated that I'd never, the two gates I never really could understand were my two sun gates. Like they never really clicked for so long. Gate 14, gate of power skills. What does that mean? I've got what skills? What, I don't know what these skills are you're talking about.
I like calling it abundance.
Right?
Oh, it's power skills, but it's also, it's also all about this. Yeah. And especially when you pair it with that, that gate 2, in that channel, then it's like, oh, okay, now I see, now I get it. Yeah. But yes, exactly. When you pick the chart apart and just look at particularly one gate, and it's supposed to be your brand or your personality or whatever, and it's like, I'm gonna have to reinterpret this for myself, I think.
So when you saw that you have this gate 14, because I'm just thinking about how I didn't really get that one for a long time. but you found you had that one 5 times, plus
Yeah.
it's your incarnation cross.
Yes.
I mean, clearly that's something you're meant to pay attention to. So did that like resonate?
14 resonated, but it's interesting you talk about your conscious sun. 30, 29 and 30, my conscious sun and earth, it took me a long time to really go. And I recognized that I had always been in the shadow expressions of them.
So let's talk about those a little bit, because I know quite a few people who have those two in some shape or form in their incarnation cross. Barb, listen up, because you have her 30 is her design sun, my sister, and her 29 is her design earth. So she's got
Right.
my niece
absolutely.
Michelle has the same cross as you, but I think she's flipped.
Yeah, exactly. Contagion has four, of course, 4 different iterations. It's one of the right angles. So you have 4, it comes around 4 times.
So let's talk about 30 first.
30. Okay. Yeah. 30, again, traditionally is looked at desires. And Gene Keys, he takes it to this really beautiful, magical place, but at the same time, and he sees the desire as the shadow, Richard does.
So before you go further, Lynn's asking, what does that mean, shadow expression? So maybe explain a little bit what we mean.
So when we talk about a shadow expression, we talk about the challenging version of that energy. So let's say we have something like the gate 30, gate of desires. Again, if you look at its placement, it's in the solar plexus. So it makes sense. Okay. Desires, it's sometimes referred to as sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Right.
I think Katie Irvine, one of our other teachers in common, definitely kind of leans into that description. It's one of those gates that, it's here for the experience. It's here because it wants to feel something. It desires.
Mm-hmm.
So a desire can be, motivated by many things. You can have desires that kind of have maybe less than, if we think about integrity,
Mm-hmm.
Desire can just rear its head and take you down, a very dark path if you follow desires. If you follow every desire of your heart, your body, you could live a very dangerous life.
Yeah.
Particularly if you think of sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Yeah.
Taking that to a shadow place, a challenged, difficult, dark journey. But there again, and 30 is a part of a part of the imprint of humanity. We're all here to experience desire.
Yeah, it's the most passionate gate in
yes, exactly.
The gate
so
of the desire.
It is called the gate of passions and quantum. So when we think of that expression, you also have to look at your authority. I always go, okay, well, guess what? I have emotional authority, but I also have my generator sacral.
Mm-hmm.
And I always, like me in particular, my sacral center and my solar plexus are connected. I have the whole channel, the 59.6. So how I really connect into how I'm, meant to operate, i.e. strategy. A lot of people call it in human design, versus authority, it's all wrapped up with gate 30. So and with it being my earth gate, it's here to ground me. So I literally look at that gate as getting in touch with my desires is really key to my, my grounded path. And another thing that I'm learning more and more, and something that Katie Irvine, our HD school guide, shares with us that I think is like, she pulled from traditional human design is that, your conscious sun gate is your conscious sun gate. You have it, it's there, it's what it is. But if you can kind of lean into the expression and play around with the conscious earth gate, that's really how you sort of push up into your conscious sun expression. So where you are on the spectrum related to your conscious earth. So for me, that's 30. If I'm not really in touch with my desires, then I'm very likely out of whack with what I'm committing to.
Right. Because
which is my gate 29. My commitments are off.
Right. Yeah.
And if I don't know my passions, I don't know what to commit to.
Yeah.
And my whole life, I was operating, one of the shadow expressions of 29, gate 29, which is the gate of devotion in, in Gene Keys, is half-heartedness. And that I always had kind of one foot out the door, no matter what I was doing, relationships, jobs, it was always like, well, I can always leave. And for someone with contagion, that is a real dangerous place to live.
Yeah. Well, I could talk to you about all this stuff for another hour, but I just realized I was like thinking we had like another 10 minutes and I'm like, oh, it's already 2 o'clock.
I know. Can you believe it's already the top of the hour?
Yeah, right. So I shouldn't say 2 o'clock because it's not 2 o'clock for you and probably for half the people listening. It's already top of the hour. So good way to say it.
Right.
But if there was anybody who quick had a question that we have not addressed, I think that I've already read the comments that were on there. I will look again right at the end to see if I missed anything, but I want to thank you, Guin, for all of this. And good, Guin put
I was going to say, I've got one of those little, it's sort of like a link tree, and it's got all of my links. It's got if you want to check out the podcast, if you want to, I've got something that I just developed and I'm really excited about and haven't really even launched yet to the public, but it's the Quiet Leaders Success Kit. So you can beta that if you like.
Awesome.
And if you're interested in niche, I actually took your niche gates and put them through. So I will send that to you, Kathy. But if you're interested in quantum niche design, get in touch with me. I'm actually going to do a free workshop coming up. So connect with me.
If you can put that info in the intuitive human design group,
I definitely will.
Comments on this, and you can see anybody else who wants to connect with you can do there. But every week we tell these stories, where people let us know how human design has helped them. Guin shared her story graciously, and we've had many guests. And if you're ready to tell a better story of who you are and want to work with Guin or myself, reach out. You can contact me through my website, kathybashanko.com, or through this Facebook group, or if you're watching this on YouTube, you can comment here, and we'll have Guin's comments in the notes. So, and everybody, thank you for joining us, and we will have everybody have a great day.